I would like to call the Committee of the Whole public meeting for June 3rd, 2025 to order. I would like to acknowledge that this meeting is taking place on unceded Algonquin homelands. I would like to acknowledge and thank the Algonquin nations for their stewardship of these lands. I would now like to ask if anyone has an interest to declare to please do so now. I am seeing none, so I'm now going to call for a mover to approve the agenda. Trustee Scott, does anyone have any changes or additions to the agenda? I am seeing none. All those in favor of the agenda? And that carries. I'm going to move on to the briefing from the chair of the board. Chair Scott, can you please provide your briefing?
Good evening. Last month, from May the 5th to the 11th, the OCDSB shone a spotlight on well-being by marking Mental Health Week. To help families explore this year's theme of unmasking mental health, the district shared daily activities designed to spark conversations and challenge the stigma surrounding mental illness and addiction. Many schools embraced the week, implementing school-wide events, classroom discussions, and collaborative displays. By engaging students in meaningful ways, schools are helping to build a more supportive and understanding environment for everyone. To know about the impactful ways schools brought Mental Health Week to life, please read the Spotlight feature on our website. Next, a reminder that registration is open for the Indigenous Summer Learning Program. First Nation, Inuit, and Métis students who have completed grade 10 English are encouraged to register for this program. It provides a unique opportunity for cultural and academic growth through Indigenous language learning, learning on the land, collaboration, and connections with community partners, and the opportunity to earn a grade 11 English credit. Registration information and more details are available on our website. And finally, I would like to extend our best wishes to all those in our community who are celebrating Eid al-Adha this weekend. And that ends my briefing, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you, Chair Scott. Are there any questions for the chair at this time? Seeing none, we will move on to the briefing from the director. Director, can you please provide your briefing?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. Good evening, everyone. The Student Senate is the official committee representing secondary students' views at the Ottawa-Carleton District School Board. The Student Senate has launched a short voluntary survey for all OCDSB students in grades 9 to 12. The survey will ask about students' experiences with the Ontario Secondary School Literacy Test and school-provided menstrual products, as well as their awareness of the Student Senate itself. The link to complete the survey has been emailed to all eligible students and is available in the student portal. All students are encouraged to share their voice and help the Senate develop policies that impact students. The survey will close on June 13th, 2025. A reminder that the OCDSB is currently reviewing and updating two policies. The first is the Community Use of Schools policy, which is being revised to align with current priorities and practices and to support good governance and responsible use of resources. The second is the Distribution of Communication Materials in Schools policy, which will merge two existing policies to ensure materials comply with legislation and support student achievement and belonging. Feedback on both policies is accepted until 4 p.m. on June 9th, 2025 at engage.ocdsb.ca. That ends my briefing. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Director. Are there any questions for the Director at this time? I am seeing none, so we have no delegations this evening, and we will move on to reports from statutory and other committees. And I will now call for a mover to receive the report of the Advisory Committee on Equity dated April 24th, 2025. Trustee Dixon, are there any errors or omissions to this report? Trustee Kaplan-Murth?
Thank you. Through you, Chair. I just want to note that these minutes do not acknowledge that at that meeting, as the only Jewish trustee in the room, I was asked to leave the room, and the chairs said that I could stay, but the ACE committee overruled the chairs and had me leave during a conversation that was pertinent to the Jewish community.
All right, thank you, trustee Kaplan-Murphy. We can take a look at those minutes and bring them back if they can bring back and it is noted. Are there any other errors or omissions? Seeing none, I'm going to call the vote to receive the report. All those in favor? And that carries. Thank you. We're moving on to matters for action, and I will now call upon trustee Blackburn to present her notice of motion, OCDSB relationship with the Ottawa Police Service. And if we can have the notice of motion on the screen, that would be appreciated. Trustee Blackburn?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to move the motion on the screen, please.
All right, thank you, trustee Blackburn. Would you like introduction?
I would, Madam Chair. Thank you, and through you. This evening, my colleagues, we are discussing a very common sense motion that should not be contentious, but very well may be to some. When the OCDSB trustees last term decided to end the school resource officer program, we also added very strict terms as to when the Ottawa Police Service could engage in school settings. These restrictions have proven to be very problematic for the ways in which the police can interact with our students, staff, and school communities. This has negatively affected student and staff safety and has placed undue hardship on school administrators. Some of us who have spoken with our school administrators know this to be true. In addition, this strict approach risks damaging the reputation of the OCDSB both within Ottawa and throughout the province. It is my view that we are all aware of the reasons why this debate began years ago. I have fought for marginalized people and communities all of my life, and that remains true to this day. I believe our caring staff are cognizant of what elements need to be part of a positive, proactive relationship with the Ottawa Police, one that benefits all students, regardless of their identity or personal circumstances. It is up to them, under the leadership of Dr. Buffoni, to negotiate this important relationship and report back to us. My comments are meant for people who vote based on the reality in our schools, not based on political ideology. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you, trustee Blackburn. I have a speakers list started, so I have trustee Kaplan-Murphy.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I'm not sure what language trustee Presley used in 2023 when we already ruled that another motion about police was out of order. But I do want to ask first, before I go ahead, whether or not this is in order, because this is a motion that's asking us to continue what we're already doing. And then it's a motion that's asking us that's asking the director or the staff to prepare a report from us, which I don't see as being necessary as a motion.
Yes, thank you, trustee Kaplan-Murphy. In consultation with both general counsel, the director, and the chair, I am ruling that this motion is in order because of changing circumstances of the province and also the addition of the second, therefore be it resolved, which is part B, and we can have it back up on the screen. So I am ruling that this motion is in order.
Okay, thank you. So the Ministry of Education suggesting that police should be back in schools is, in my opinion, inappropriate. We did work in 2021 to end the SRO program and remove police from schools. That was important to address the past and present discrimination and bias by police in interactions with Black, Indigenous, and LGBTQIA, by women and girls who report violence and sexual harassment, and by people with mental illnesses and disabilities and other marginalized groups in our community. Removal of police was also important to address the trauma associated with police interactions by refugees and newcomers to Canada. The previous Board of Trustees and community organizations put in tremendous effort to address this issue. We have lengthy reports, which I hope the trustees have read from their analysis. And as I said, we discussed this again in 2023. As I said then, and I will say again tonight, we have a responsibility as the elected representatives of our constituents to advocate for our community. Vulnerable populations in Ottawa have made it crystal clear that from an equity and social justice lens, canceling the SRO program was the right thing to do. That does not mean that the OCDSB has no relationship with the Ottawa Police, which is what Michelle Giroux clarified for us when we spoke about this in 2023. We have an ongoing relationship with the police. We are building that rapport. So part A, we are already doing. That is not something that we need to vote on again. And as for Part B, I do believe, if you look back to the notes from 2023, Michelle Giroux said that the staff do have the ability to provide us with regular reports. And so there's nothing in this that is actually substantive. What we're asking for, if anything here, is for a report on how our district is working with the police in ways that respect the motion that was passed in 2021. Otherwise, we have to rescind the aspects of that motion that said there will not be uniformed police, there will not be an SRO program, and we will respect those communities who have said that they've been harmed. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Trustee Kaplan-Murth. And I think at this point we can have the motion removed from the screen. And if we can ensure moving forward the timers on the screen, that would be appreciated. And I am looking around to see if there are any other speakers to the motion on the table. Trustee Scott.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will be supporting this recommendation. I do think it is important to have a report periodically on where things are, particularly since the situation within OPS has changed in the last year, to introduce some new community youth officers. And also because we have heard some concerns about the way that services are being provided when police services are needed in schools, in terms of availability, timing, and a host of other issues from our principals across the system. I do think it is important to have a report. Although there was a commitment to bring regular reports, we have in fact not had regular reports. And I think that having a little more understanding of how the situation has changed, particularly with the changes in what the Ottawa Police Service is currently doing with respect to youth, would be helpful to us in considering going forward. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Trustee Scott. Continuing down my speakers list, I have Trustee Dixon.
Through you, Chair. I guess with this motion, are we going to be having police officers that are coming in? Are they going to be specially trained to deal with our students and our children when it comes to taking statements?
So we can hand it over to the mover of the motion to clarify what the motion is, but I do believe that right now we are talking about the therefore be it resolved. So it's directing staff to prepare a report to trustees providing an update. We're not voting on on an SRO program tonight, but I will let the mover clarify if she would like.
So just to clarify, the term school resource officer program is not an OCDSB term. It's an Ottawa Police Service term, which my understanding is they're not ever going to use again. We have community youth liaison officers who are specially trained to deal with youth.
Okay. So I will support this because as a mother of a murdered youth, I think it's very important that the police is in our schools so our students, our children can learn to communicate with them and not be afraid to be able to speak. So I would support this motion.
All right, thank you, Trustee Dixon. I am looking around the table. Trustee Lara.
Thanks. So we spent a significant amount of time and energy reaching out to our community. We had thousands of responses to our consultation, and the report that we put together very clearly says, and I'll quote it for you, students shared experiences of having police cars constantly parked outside of Gloucester, Ridgemont, and Woodruff schools. Students spoke about the psychological impacts, feeling watched, and the negative impact that's had on their ability to feel a deeper sense of belonging in the school community. Participants also suggested that constant armed police presence affected their academic performance and reduced their sense of psychological safety, in particular for Indigenous, Black, racialized, LGBTQ, and disabled students and communities. That's our report. We wrote that. There is another report written by the Ontario Human Rights Commission called Dreams Delayed, Addressing Systemic Anti-Black Racism and Discrimination in Ontario's Public Education System. I'm going to quote from that report. The public education system is mandated to maintain a safe learning environment for all students, including Black students. Part of a safe learning environment includes addressing bullying and harassing behavior. Similarly, in policing, there is a societal significant intersection between race and mental health that may affect other decisions about officers' use of force. There are stereotypes about Black people regarding violence and criminality, and concerns that police are more likely to use force in their interactions with Black people. Furthermore, people with mental health disabilities may be more likely to be subject to officer use of force because of responses to police instructions or behaviors that may seem unusual, unpredictable, or inappropriate, or due to police reliance on stereotypical assumptions about dangerousness or violence. Police presence and surveillance inside schools has a disproportionate impact on Indigenous, Black, and other racialized students. Historically, police have been part of a broader system of racism and discrimination across multiple levels. Research with racialized students showed that participants see this as a practice as collusion between police and school officials to maintain an undue level of surveillance and harassment towards Indigenous, Black, and other racialized students. That's the Ontario Human Rights Commission. Everybody that I have spoken with around the table says that they believe in evidence-based decision-making, that we make our decisions based on the best evidence and the best information that we have in front of us. We have a 100+ page report that we commissioned less than 5 years ago on how our community feels about police in schools. And we have a significant Ontario-wide Ontario Human Rights report that says substantively the same thing, that police in schools are detrimental to educational outcomes and to our students' well-being. Why on earth would we reopen this can of worms?
All right, thank you, Trustee Lara. I'm looking around the table for any other first-time speakers. All right, I'm seeing none. Trustee Lee, could you please take the chair for a moment?
Go ahead.
All right, thank you. I am reading the therefore it be it resolved clauses, and I am seeing this as continuing discussions and preparing a report. And we just had a discussion on tying our staff's hands with motions and with dates, and how it's important to make sure they have the ability to make decisions, but also to adjust their timing as needed. Therefore, if they would like to bring a report forward, especially in light of the new information from the province, I totally understand and would welcome that report, but I won't be supporting this motion because I don't want to tie our staff's hands. Thank you.
Back to you.
All right, I'm looking around the room for any other speakers. Trustee Jenkins.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the mover. I will be supporting this motion, and with respect to I agree with Trustee Scott that we definitely need an updated report provided to the Board of Trustees that shares the current, current relationship with OPS. I do think it's important that we create a modern, more transparent, equity-informed partnership that puts student safety and well-being first while respecting the community concerns. So I will be supporting the motion. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Trustee Jenkins. Trustee Nash?
Yes, and through you, Chair. I too will be supporting the motion, and I would ask that the report receive the views of all our staff, and I'm looking at our social workers, psychologists, our frontline staff that work with youth. I want to hear from them, particularly in this report.
All right, thank you, Trustee Nash. I'm looking around the room. Trustee Presley?
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you. Just a question to the Director. Director Buffone, are we in fairly regular communication with our community partners at the Police Department?
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, we are. Through Associate Director Reynolds and the leadership of Superintendent Keene, we're in constant communication, collaboration with the Ottawa Police Service.
Excellent, that's what I thought. And then another question for the Director. Would asking staff to prepare this report impede them from using their time or resources from other things that actually pertain to the education of our students?
Through you, Madam Chair, we approach our administration of school sites on a number of matters of importance throughout the course of the school year that tie to achievement, equity, and well-being. So this would be similar in nature to other requests we make of our staff on an ongoing basis, much like our work with the Ottawa Police Service, where we engage our staff on a number of fronts into a communication on a regular basis.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that, Director Buffone. Just to piggyback off of Trustee Milburn's comment about how we had a lengthy discussion about not tying hands of our staff to certain dates and reports. I will not be supporting this. I also just want to say from a personal note that I'm very disappointed that we are considering directing our staff to write a report about the organization of another caliber and our relationship with them when we weren't willing to direct them to write a report about pedagogical delivery systems that we employ throughout this district. So I think we need to remember where our priorities are in the education of our students and their well-being. I fully welcome a report from staff regarding our relationship with community partners of the police service. I think that's important. However, I do not think that we should be tying our staff's hands by asking them to do it by a certain date. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Trustee Presley. Moving down my speakers list, I see no other first-time speakers for trustees, so I'll go to Lily Miller and then I'll go to my second-time speakers for trustees.
Hi, thank you. I just want to highlight what Trustee Lyra was saying, that this decision was made with the input of the marginalized community who are affected. And I don't think it would be fair to make a decision to reverse or to engage more Ottawa police without engaging the same folks who made these decisions, to help make these decisions. Number two, I would hope that that things have changed with the Ottawa police and that their statistics showed that there was no longer any targeted race-based incidents. But I just pulled up online that it still is an issue where the use of force is used disproportionately for Black people and Indigenous people. So I would say it's incumbent on the Ottawa police to make changes so that the children in the schools and the families feel safe. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Lily. I'm going down my second-time speakers list for trustees, so I have Trustee Kaplan-Myrth and Trustee Lara.
Thank you. So first, I would like to put forward 2 amendments to this motion.
Okay, you may put forward your amendment, your first amendment, and we will see.
My first amendment is that there should be a Part C, that we direct the OCDSB to prepare a report based on a consultation with the Black, Caribbean, African, Indigenous, and 2 LGBTQ community, the same people who we consulted with the first time around, to ask what their perspective is on the current status of the relationship with the police. So that
Before you continue, Trustee Kaplan-Myrth, have these been sent in advance?
No.
Okay, I'm going to call a 2-minute recess if you can come over so that we can get the language on the screen, and then we will go through if it is friendly or not, but we're just going to have a 2-minute recess. Back to order. Thank you for everyone's patience as we get the language ready for the screen. So if we can share our screens or the screen with the amendment. And if we can zoom in slightly on the Part C. And then scroll down so that we're just seeing. Okay, thank you. Thank you everyone for the patience. So Trustee Kaplan-Murth, you are moving your first amendment, which is on the screen, that staff be directed to prepare a report based on consultation with Black, Indigenous, LGBTQ+ and other identified groups in the 2021 report to assess the status of the relationship with the Ottawa Police and perspectives for the impact bringing OPS into schools. So now we are asking, just so everyone's on the same page, if this amendment is friendly. Yes, Trustee Scott?
I'm wondering, Madam Chair, if it is actually in order, because it talks about bringing OPS back into schools. There is no proposal to do that at this point. And while it might be a report that would be of interest to us, it also doesn't have anything to do really with updating us on what the current status is in terms of police involvement, because there's always been some police involvement because some of it is mandated.
In conversations with our general counsel, the idea behind the amendment is that we would be preparing an additional report that would complement or add to the report that is proposed in the Part B of the motion. So I will rule it in order because it's preparing a report. Would anyone like to challenge the chair at this time? Okay, so we'll move on from challenging the chair. And are we considering this a friendly or an unfriendly amendment? I'm looking around the room. Not friendly. Okay, so it is not a friendly amendment. So Trustee Kaplan-Murth, you get introduction for this amendment to the motion on the floor. You have 3 minutes for introduction.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. The reason that I'm introducing this amendment is that as Trustee Lyra and I have already said this evening, and also Lily Miller has said, we have conducted extensive consultations with the community. And if the proposal here is that maybe something has changed between 2021 and 2025, I think it behooves us to check in with the people who were identified by Ontario Human Rights, by our own community consultations, and by the other consultations that were brought to us, the reports that were brought to us, saying that any relationship with the police needs to be basically checked with those people who are traumatized historically and currently by the police. So what I'm asking is that rather than us directing the staff to only ask for a report on what our relationship is, we also, if we're going to do this, if we're going to open this can of worms, it absolutely should include the voices of the people who are impacted. And I take what Chair Scott was saying, that that we're not asking earlier on about bringing police back into the schools, but that is what we've heard from the Minister of Education. And so I'm happy with changing the wording if you want to just say to assess the status of their relationship with the Ottawa Police, the same as Part B says, our relationship with the Ottawa Police. But these are the impacted, I don't like that, never mind, that's not a proper use of the verb. These are the groups who are affected by police presence. And if we're going to use our resources and our limited time to demand that the staff prepare a report, then I think that we should slow this down and do a proper further consultation to say, has anything changed from the community perspective? And that complements what we are doing in terms of our relationship with the police. But anything that we otherwise take from what report is provided to us does not help us to respond to the province's assertion that schools should have police in the schools again.
All right, thank you, Trustee Kappelmuth. So we are speaking to the amendment on the floor. If anyone would like to speak to it, I have Trustee Blackburn on my list to the amendment on the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just for clarification, as always, when I craft a motion, I check with staff, and staff made it very clear to me that September 30th was perfectly acceptable to them to provide the board with a report. So obviously, this motion, and maybe the mover could speak to this because I just want clarification. This looks like a full-blown consultation, which I'm fine with. However, obviously that can't be, and she did not, I know, put a date in it, which makes sense because obviously it couldn't be done by September 30th because it's now June.
Point of order, that's my second motion. It's just not on the screen.
Oh, okay.
That is on the second part, yes, that we're just speaking. There's a second amendment, but we are only speaking to this one on the floor right now, but there is a second amendment coming.
That has a date and time?
Or
Well,
removes a date and time, yeah.
Okay, well,
Removes the date and time from part B, but we are only talking about adding part C.
okay, well, that's a little bit problematic in my opinion. So again, I'm happy to do a consultation, but I would concur with Trustee Scott. That's a different thing. And I obviously am not, like I just said, I have consulted with staff. I have done that like I always do. So I'm not obviously going to support amending what I've consulted with staff on that they committed to me that they could easily do. So I will wait to see what my colleagues have to say.
All right, thank you, Trustee Blackburn. Trustee Jenkins?
Thank you, Chair. And I appreciate that the different communities, groups have been identified, but I think there also needs to be considerations from parents, families, communities that aren't necessarily Black, Indigenous, LGBTQ. What about just a regular parent or a family member who doesn't necessarily identify? I mean, are we going to hear from their voices?
All right, thank you, Trustee Jenkins. I'm seeing no other hands to the amendment that's currently on the floor. So Trustee Kaplan-Murphy, you have wrap up.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. The only thing that I would add is that we did discuss this extensively at the Advisory Committee of Equity back in 2023. I don't have the time or ability right now to pull up all of the discussion and the communities that were previously identified as traumatized by SRO presence aren't at the table today to delegate. They're not here to explain to us yet again what we've already been told in previous reports. But if we are going to open this can of worms, we need to do so respecting those communities and honestly asking just for a report, even if it's a report that ACE provides, I think is very important. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Trustee Kaplan-Murphy. So we are voting on the amendment that is on the screen right now. So all those in favor of adding the amendment to the motion that is on the floor, please raise your hand. So that is 5-6 in favor. Can we remove the motion from the screen, please, just so I can see? So that is 6 in favor and all those opposed. And that's 6 against, so that 5 again. Trustee Lee. So 6 against and 6 in favor, and that motion fails. So we are now going back. Trustee Kaplan-Murphy, would you like to bring forward your second amendment?
Yes. So the second amendment is quite simple, which is that we, as I think Trustee Presley already also said, we have been demanding various different timelines from our staff. We know that we've also talked in the past about work-life balance and the mental health of our staff. We are almost at the end of the school year. So we're talking about asking them to prepare something really in the next 3 weeks that is the only way that they could, or they're going to have to prepare it in their first few weeks when we're back in September. That seems to me, irrespective of whether or not the writer of the motion got the okay from staff, that seems to me like any report that we're going to get is not going to be a very well researched report. So if this is like a simple one-page report that they're going to provide to us, I also think that it's not a useful exercise. But I would take off, my motion is just to take off the September deadline and respect the time and the energy of the staff and allow them to prepare it when they can do so, giving us something that is meaningful.
All right, thank you, Trustee Kaplan-Myrth, and thank you for the introduction. Is this friendly? I'm looking around. It is not friendly, so we will start a speakers list. Trustee Blackburn?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I could turn to the director, as I hate to repeat myself, but I did consult with staff and I was given assurances. I'm not asking for a 100-page report here. I'm asking for an update on the status of our current relationship with the Ottawa Police Service. It's not a hard ask.
Through you, Madam Chair, staff understands the spirit of the request from Trustee Blackburn. We can work early in the fall season to prepare a report. This doesn't present a major timeline obstacle for staff in any capacity.
All right, thank you, Director. Thank you, Trustee Blackburn. Trustee Forte?
I'm just curious that Chair Scott had mentioned earlier that we haven't had a report for a while. So I am concerned about the set date of September 30th. I just want some kind of assurance that this is coming as opposed to no date and then we're still stuck with not getting a report.
Through you, Madam Chair, I appreciate the comment from Trustee Forte. If it's helpful for the Board of Trustees to, bringing forward a report in the fall season, it'll give a little bit of flexibility. But again, staff will be able to bring something forward in the fall that will bring, as written, a status update of our relationship with the Ottawa Police Service. So if it helps to broaden it to the fall season, we'll build it into the work plan and make sure it's into the board agenda planning.
All right, thank you, Director. Trustee Dixon?
Through you, Chair. I have a question, but I'm not sure if it sort of falls in with this. But my question is, when it comes to our teachers, since we are, since we're talking about bringing in the SROs and so forth, are we going to be giving our teachers?
Trustee Dixon, I think that's probably going to be to the main amendment on the
Okay.
floor. We're only talking about the date. And as Trustee Blackburn pointed out, I used SRO incorrectly. It is the community liaison. Okay, thank you. So that is for the main motion. I have you on my speakers list. So continuing down on the amendment, are there any other speakers to the amendment that is currently on the floor? Seeing none, Trustee Kaplan-Myrth, you have wrap up.
Thank you. So I guess I have a question for Director Buffon, which is if we had just asked, can we please get a report, which is what we actually have done in the past on other issues without needing to pass any kind of motion, would he not have just assured us, yes, he'll get us something sometime in the fall?
Through you, Madam Chair, I think in response to Trustee Kaplan-Myrth's question, if recommendation a motion is brought forward for staff, we tend to view it in the context of the upcoming school year's work plan. We would have really just scheduled it into the work plan and likely brought it forward for the fall season. Trustee Blackburn did approach staff around timelines. We understand the request here and set the date so we can bring it forward in September. If it's of a greater desire to have more flexibility, we can bring it forward in the fall season to buy a little bit more time if that's helpful to the Board of Trustees. But the trustee who brought forward the motion did connect with staff on this front, and we would line it up in our work plan earlier than later in the context of what the motion currently says. But if more flexibility is desired, it would just mean we would bring it forward ideally in the fall season, as you've mentioned.
Thank you. That wasn't really my question. My question was whether or not we can ask you to prepare reports, which I'm sure we have done over the last few years. We ask for reports without a motion. Like, do you need that direction?
Trustee Kaplan-Meier, right now the conclusion is for the amendment that is on the floor. If you would like to raise that question under new business, you can raise it under new business this evening.
Okay.
Okay. So we are going to vote for the amendment moved by Trustee Kaplan-Meier that is on the floor, that no later than September 30th, 2025, in Part B be removed from the recommendation. All those in favor of removing that from the recommendation, please raise your hand. And opposed? And that fails. So now we are back to speaking to the main motion that is on the floor. And Trustee Kaplan-Meier, I believe you had about 2 minutes and 30 seconds left, but they have recorded the time.
Okay, well, in terms of the main motion, I'm quite disappointed that that we're bringing this back as though there is something new that we're presenting. We're not presenting anything new, but what we are doing is excluding the voices of Black, African, Caribbean, Indigenous, and 2 LGBTQ communities when we're seeking to provide, for sure, something that's going to go back to the Ministry of Education. This is just a very underhanded way of being able to fulfill whatever it is the province is asking us to do. So I do we support it or don't we support it? I mean, it's kind of irrelevant. I will abstain tonight because I think that this is meaningless. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Trustee Kaplan-Meier. I have Trustee Lara, then Trustee Dixon. Trustee Lara.
Thanks. So I don't think this is meaningless. Ontario is a nation of laws, and the law is that a proposal by the minister has to pass the House after public consultation, which has not happened, and then it has to pass, get royal assent. And the proposal that exists right now is to empower the minister to instruct school boards to join an SRO program if appropriate. There isn't currently an SRO program in Ottawa. And the minister would have to utilize that power to instruct us if one did. And there are many steps between where we are now and where the ministry may want to go. And I'm not going to do their work for them. I'm not going to jump up and down and say, you want us to do that? Let's jump right on it, because we have evidence from our local community whom we were elected to represent, that this is not in our best interests. This is not in our students' best interests. And so I would disagree with my colleague. I don't think that this is futile. I think this is setting us up for the conversation that we need to have. I would also say there is a long history of governmental and quasi-governmental institutions going out to a community and asking, what do you think about this? How do you feel? And then the community comes out and says, we don't like that. And the government goes away and waits a couple of years and then comes back and says, what do you think about that? How do you feel? And then goes away when the community says, we don't like that. And this situation repeats until the government gets the answer that it wants. Because every time a community has to mobilize, and every time you've got to get people out to write delegations and write letters and fill out whatever survey the government or quasi-governmental institution creates, takes time and energy. And if you just ask them enough times, eventually you won't get a large, overwhelming response. No. And so this, to me, feels like us going back and saying, we didn't get, like, some people didn't like the answer that we got the first time, so we're going to ask until we get the answer we like. And that is not how consultations should work. I can appreciate that there are people who were not happy about the result last time. Unfortunately, tough. I'm also going to ask that this is a recorded vote.
All right, thank you, Trustee Lyra. Continuing down my second time speakers list, Trustee Dixon.
Through you, Chair. Back to the Section B. I'd like to make sure that we ensure the voices of the educators are included in this, because we do have our students that are facing some human trafficking and other sexual assaults within the classroom, so the teachers can be able to help spot it and help to guide the police in the right way when it comes to our students.
Who are you asking that to, Trustee Dixon?
The director, if he could answer that.
Through you, Madam Chair, I'm going to turn over to Associate Director Reynolds, who oversees the portfolio, will be able to give a bit more detail with respect to your query.
Thanks through you, Madam Chair. So a number of years ago, the district was already involved with the province issued direction around developing anti-human sex trafficking protocols, which we have. And we do work with a number of key community partners in developing and implementing those protocols. Ottawa Police play a role in informing those agencies and our staff indirectly in what the response might be from police, as CAS does, as other organizations. And we have conducted training with our school-based staff and administrators on the use of that protocol for reporting, disclosures. We take anti-human sex trafficking very seriously, and we've grown increasingly aware of the scope and scale of the issue, not just here, but throughout the province. And the police service, along with other youth-serving agencies in the city, are going to continue to play an important role in helping us with that work.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Trustee Dixon. And we're going on to third-time speaker, so Trustee Kaplan-Murth.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. I really liked what Trustee Lyra said. Asking until we get the answer that we like has been a perpetual issue here. And so actually, I take it back. I'll just vote against it. I'm not going to abstain. But I think I think that the danger of proceeding is that we are undoing decisions that we make. And I guess my question to the Board of Trustees is, what is the importance of decisions that we make if we can then open up each discussion and keep passing motions until finally we reverse decisions that were made based on, as Trustee Lara said, very strong evidence. So I will vote against this tonight, and I would implore my colleagues to think about how we are using our time and our resources, including our staff resources. It's not, I don't think, going to be a very informative report that we're going to get between now and September without actually looking at the impact on the community. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Trustee Kaplan-Murth. I'm seeing no other hands, so I'm about to hand it back to Trustee Blackburn for, Trustee Presley, my apologies. Please go ahead.
No, my apologies, Madam Chair. I was just going to ask if we could call the question, so I think it's perfect time for the mover to provide wrap up.
Okay, so Trustee Blackburn, wrap up, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you, and I thank my colleagues for the debate. So my main concern in bringing this forward, my colleagues, is to ensure that staff have every capacity to ensure the safety of our students, of our staff, and of our school communities. That is my motivation. In addition, there's nothing in this motion, and I mentioned it in my opening remarks, there is nothing in this motion that prevents staff from consulting with any community partner about anything they are doing in moving forward with the relationship with the police. There are many of us at this table who attended, for instance, a parental involvement committee meeting in which the police, the youth officers came to speak to PIC. The group in the room was a very diverse group. They were well received. They provided the committee and many of the trustees here with valuable information. Since that time, those community youth officers have attended our parental involvement conference. Again, very well received, and some of us have attended that. So this is not as one-sided as you think. And, you know, I am a member of a marginalized community. Those of you who know my family know that I'm not the only member of my family who belong to a marginalized community. So I thank you all again, my colleagues, for this debate. I look forward to the motion passing, and I look forward to staff having the capacity to ensure everything they can do to ensure the safety of our students, of our staff, and of our school communities. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you, Trustee Blackburn, and a roll call vote has been requested, so I will hand it over for the roll call vote.
Thank you. Please indicate if you are for, against, or abstaining. Trustee Bell?
Against.
I'm sorry? Trustee
Against.
Blackburn?
For.
Trustee Dixon?
In favor?
Trustee Evans, Lyra?
Opposed.
Trustee Forty?
In favor.
Trustee Jennings?
In favor?
Trustee Kaplan-Mirth?
Opposed.
Trustee Lee?
In favor.
Trustee Milburn?
Against.
Trustee Nash?
In favor.
Trustee Presley?
Opposed.
Trustee Scott?
In favor?
Thank you.
And can you read the results out loud because if it was a roll call vote?
The result is 7 in favor, 5 against. No abstentions.
And the motion is carried. Thank you, everyone, for the discussion. We are now going to take a 5-minute recess. So if we can be back by 8:01, that would be appreciated. 8:01, so I will call the meeting back to order, and I will now call upon Associate Director Reynolds to present Report 25-030, Student Learning Update Preparation of Students for Future Success.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. It's my pleasure to introduce the team from a bunch of places. We have Reed, we have Program Services, and under the leadership of Superintendent Reg Laverne, and they're going to walk you through the report that's before you.
Thank you, through you, Chair. The report that we have before you this evening is our third in a series of updates on student learning. This report focuses on preparing students for future success. As you'll recall, earlier this year, we brought part 1, which was core academic skills. Part 2 was focused on student well-being and engagement. And then naturally, the third part today focuses on indicators such as credit accumulation, graduation rates, and other indicators for preparing students for success in the future. And perhaps some of our most innovative work in the areas of experiential learning. So excited for the discussion this evening. The data sources that we focus on in the report are framed around the indicators in the ministry's student achievement plan. So we have credit accumulation. By that, we're looking at the proportion of students that are attaining 16 credits by the end of grade 10. We also have enrollment in senior level math and science courses. So the proportion of students that are taking grade 11 science, grade 12 science, or grade 12 math. We have participation in job skills programs such as SHISM, that's our specialist high skills major, OEAP, the Ontario Youth Apprenticeship Program, and the Dual Credit Program. We also have data on graduation rates and student perceptions of preparedness for the future as recorded through a student survey. So we have two ways in which we calculate this data. One is the data that we get from the Ministry of Education for the OCDSB, which allows us to make comparisons for our local data to the province, and then we have our replicated calculations of that data that we use to do our disaggregation and to look at some of our changes over time. So tonight we're going to focus on the high-level summaries, mostly in comparisons to the provincial data, but the full disaggregation is found in the report in Appendix C in the tables at the end, and we can get into those in the discussion as well. When we start by looking at credit accumulation, we see that 82% of OCDSB students are deemed to be on track to graduate by the end of grade 10, compared to 78 province-wide. So a 4% difference there, with OCDSB students outperforming the province. In particular, we see that the gaps have narrowed for many of our identified groups, in particular students who identify as Indigenous. One exception there is students living in low-income neighborhoods, so that's an opportunity for future exploration and work. When we look at participation in job skills programs, we see that over 2,000 students participated in a job skills program at the OCDSB last year, with higher participation from some of our historically underserved groups. When we look at our graduation rates, we see that our most recent graduation rate shows that 91% of students at the OCDSB graduate within 5 years, compared to 90% province-wide. One area that merits further investigation here is the gap that persists for students who identify as Indigenous, with particular interest digging into that finding, seeing that we are narrowing the gap when we look at credit accumulation. So trying to do some additional investigation around cohorts and tracking those students to see why we're seeing a narrowing of the gap with students being on track to graduate, but then not reflected in the later graduation numbers. The next metric is enrollment in senior in math and science courses. 59% of OCDSB students take these courses last year. This is a 1% higher rate than we see province-wide. And again, we do disaggregation of this data by demographic factors. One key finding from this coming out of the discussion around Learning Report 1, where we disaggregated EQAO performance in math for males and females, and the board engaged in some discussion around the differences with female students underperforming compared to their male counterparts. But when we look at the enrollment here in these higher level or these senior level math and science courses, we see that females are enrolling at the same rate as males. So we're seeing that disproportionality even out when looking at this particular metric. And then the final metric that I'll highlight is student perceptions of preparedness for future success. About 2/3 of students in the OCDSB report being prepared for their next step in their learning. Important context for this one is that this is from the EQAO questionnaire. So we are looking at smaller groups of students because it slices by grade. But overall, we see that our results are consistent with what we see province-wide, and that, not surprising, older students tend to report greater levels of preparedness. And one of the ways that we do prepare students for future learning opportunities is through pathways-focused opportunities. And on that note, I will pass it over to Superintendent Laverne to talk about some of those opportunities for students.
Thank you and good evening, everyone. One of the pieces, are we able to move to the next slide? Thank you. One of the priorities we have within Pathways is to give students an opportunity to try different experiences. Even more importantly, we want them to explore possible future options that they had not considered before, or had considered but thought that they could not access and achieve at. So providing opportunities for students to engage in these different types of learning experiences opens their possibilities, opens their eyes to those possibilities, and then opens the doors to those possibilities as well. And within the report, we've tried to embed a series of examples of different programming that we have developed. One thing we're very proud of within this work as well is that the spirit and philosophy that fuels those programs is starting to blend into traditional classroom learning as well. So we're seeing an expansion happening there as well. As you can see on the slide before you, we've been focusing on a couple of different areas: program growth and expansion in various programs, increased student participation and engagement. And part of that has also included awareness, making sure they're aware of the opportunities before them and how they can access them. And we have been exploring and engaging in new opportunities and partnerships. I know that there's lots of examples within the report and specifically Appendix D, so I think I'll stop there and turn it over for conversation. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, staff, and thank you for preparing this excellent report. I know it was a very good read. I am going to go down my speakers list, and I have Trustee Lyra.
Thanks. I'd like to start with the delta between the ministry's understanding of the number of students enrolled in our job skills program and our understanding of the number of students enrolled in our job skills program. Can you explain some of the strategies to address the difference between 8 and 20%?
Thank you, through you, Chair. So when we are, I will say, getting closer every year to replicating the ministry's numbers. And in particular, the job skills is one where we see a larger discrepancy, in part because of the way that our data was stored around student enrollment in those programs wasn't accessible by the Ministry of Education. So we have rectified that moving forward next year, so that when the ministry is able to pull the proportion of students that we have enrolled from our student information system, they'll have accurate numbers. And so one of the ways that we've also looked at improving our calculations is getting clearer technical guidelines from the Ministry of Education, which we were able to get earlier this year. So for things such as students in the cohort that they're tracking being students who are in our board and began at the time of the start of enrollment in grade 9, which is why we'll see some fluctuations in some of the other metrics as well. But the one that you've mentioned in particular around job skills is about where the data was stored and us moving that into the correct system.
So we should see a significant narrowing in future reports?
Absolutely.
Okay. My second question is about, in 5.1, you talk about STEAM in the flight program. I'm curious why you have included arts in this.
That's a great question. Many of our programs are very much STEM focused. That one initiative, which has proven to be extremely successful, there was an intentional choice to draw the arts into that. Not only does that draw in greater creativity, collaboration, innovation, it allowed us to expand the cross-curricular nature of that particular program. It created an access point for students that may not have seen an opportunity for them to engage in that type of learning. And additionally, it created an opportunity for students who may be taking primarily science and math to see how the arts can be a beneficial learning opportunity for them, as well as seeing the intersections between the arts and science, math, technology, those pieces as well. well. So there was an intentional choice to do that with that particular initiative.
I see. My concern with STEAM is that STEM exists to try and capture a specific cohort. And when I was in university, there was a significant amount of work being done to try and encourage women in STEM because there were disproportionalities around the number of women involved in STEM versus the amount of men involved in STEM. And my concern is that if you start to mingle in the arts, you're going to dilute the thing you are seeking to understand or that you are trying to gather. And so I guess my concern is that as soon as we start to dilute STEM, we're diluting the ability to look at that data and say, who is enrolling in this and for what reason? Are we able to gather the disproportional impact on women or the disproportional impact on racialized students or students with disabilities as soon as you start to put courses that are not in the traditional STEM house under the STEAM umbrella?
I think I would refer the question specifically to the data analysis to Dr. Rahim. She's far stronger at responding to that than I. But I know that our intention in doing that was to increase access for students, and we've found that we had more students coming on board. What was another interesting piece that came out of that experience was the feedback that came from partners who had not necessarily considered the arts lens before, the inclusion of arts learning. And they were very interested to hear from students who had that lens and to start to explore how that could further elevate the work they were doing. And so it was an interesting reciprocal relationship where our students got the benefit of that experience, but people in the industry who wouldn't naturally lean towards that type of thinking started having conversations with the students and staff about how that particular perspective and that type of learning could further enhance their work in their industries.
I'll just chime in on the data perspective. Typically for specific initiatives, we don't do the full disaggregation that we do at district level data just because it is with a smaller group of students. For this one in particular, we'd be looking at about 1,000 students in total across the grades. So especially if we were disaggregating by some identity-based characteristics and by grade, we'd be looking at really small numbers and it would be hard to make some conclusions. But I do hear your point. Thank you.
Okay. I do have another question about whether or not enrollment is a good metric for setting students up for the future. So if you are a student who is successfully enrolled in grade 12 calculus and you come out at the other end with the 62, that is unlikely to be the kind of grade that you need to get into a university program in STEM. And so I'm wondering if there is some metric we can look at to make sure that the students we are enrolling, particularly those from marginalized communities, are not only enrolling in greater numbers, which is good, but are also succeeding in the courses in the numbers that we want to see to ensure that all of the pathways are available to these students at the end of high school.
Absolutely. And I think as we've had in discussion earlier, I think that there's many ways in which we could be slicing the data. And if I had all the time in the world, we'd be slicing it every way possible in these reports to get as nuanced as we possibly could. The enrollment indicator does come from the Ministry of Education in terms of the way to monitor success in this particular domain. But looking at students who achieve those credits, students who take the courses multiple times before they achieve those credits, both by identity and by school, and some of the ways that we produce reports for principals in terms of who in their schools are not only enrolling in these courses but achieving these credits is part of the work that the department engages in, and some of these additional investigations around who's achieving the credits is part of our summer work.
Does that mean that future reports are going to look at the things that we have just discussed, or is that just not ever going to be feasible on the timelines that we are constrained by on a given school year?
So with the way that the reports are currently structured, they're focused around ministry indicators, but we are hoping to move toward some more accessible, nuanced reporting with some of the tools that we're moving toward. So the department is investing in some additional tools that will allow us to have some dashboards that will allow us for some additional investigation that maybe won't always be a report that's coming on a regular basis to the Board of Trustees, but an end of year report looking at some of the overarching things that show up in those dashboards throughout the course of the year, but those dashboards being something that would be accessible.
Given the situation, I hate to ask this question, but at what cost is this going to run us for these additional tools?
So many of the tools are tools that we're already engaging in as a district and are part of the work that we're doing. And then some of the tools are tools that have simply replaced other tools that we've used as a district. So one of the tools that we've been able to move away from is one of our data collection tools, and there have been significant savings with that in terms of the department. I don't have the number offhand in terms of what it is, but I think the net savings from my department in particular have been significant with the way that we've been able to move away toward tools that let us get more precise.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you, Trustee Lara. Continuing down my speakers list, I have Trustee Kaplan-Murth and then Trustee Forte. Trustee Kaplan-Murth.
Thank you, through you, Chair. My concern is what progress have we made? I heard you say that some of the gaps have narrowed, but I don't actually see evidence of that in the report. We know that Black students, students with disabilities, Indigenous students continue to be less likely to earn credits and disproportionately less likely to graduate. We know that Muslim, Black, Indigenous, and trans students are less likely to enroll in grade 11 or 12 math or science. I don't know if other trustees are aware, but at SEAC, we looked at some of this data and we looked at the EQAO website. You can look at your own schools and get very detailed information about those schools. So for example, at Arch Street Public School, for math, only 23% of students are at or above the provincial standard. For reading, only 38%. For writing, only 33%. At Ridgemont High School, only 22% of students are at the provincial standard in grade 9 EQAO math. So I guess my question is, we're acknowledging that students who are living in lower income neighborhoods, the gap isn't narrowing, but also not all Muslim, Black, Indigenous, or trans students or students with disabilities are doing better than they were before. So where is the data that shows that there's actually been some improvement from anything that we've instituted so far? And what are we going to do to further narrow that gap in a real way so that we don't have numbers like 23% like meeting provincial standards?
Thank you, through you, Chair. So I think one of the areas where we've seen the narrowing of the gaps that we can most closely tie to some of the work being done is around the grade 10 credit accumulation, and where we do see for that particular metric, the gaps narrowing for most of the groups, particularly when we look at the data that we have system-wide information for. So when we look at the change over time, that we do see, in particular, if we look at students with special education needs, we see that there was an increase of 1%, where there was a district-wide decrease of 1%, so a closing of the gap there. As well, whenever we're looking at multilingual learners, there's a small closing of the gap, but the most notable one being for students who identify as Indigenous, in terms of a narrowing of the gap there as well. And some of the innovative work that's happening through program services in terms of helping students achieve the credits that they need to graduate in some more experiential and innovative ways. If you want to speak to those, or...
Certainly, and thank you for that. There's a couple of pieces for that. We have very much increased the prior learning and recognition credits that have been earned by students. We also have an OCDSB developed authentic student learning experience tool, which works to connect students' lived experiences and work they're doing in school to their credits, so that it is more personally meaningful for them in those areas as well. The other step that we're taking with a number of our Pathways programming is we have instituted a process to ensure that Indigenous students, multilingual learners, underserved students get access first. So we have an intentional structure put in place to ensure that they have access to those pieces first. not going to disagree at all that the gaps still persist, and we continue to work on those areas. We're actually, and I don't have anything specific to share on this right now, but we're actually at the point of the year now where we're looking at next year's plans, and we're using the data from these reports to identify certain pieces. So we know, for example, that Indigenous graduation rates have fallen. So that is a priority learning area for us to work with the Indigenous team and Indigenous students to see what specific steps we can take to change that for next year.
Thank you. I guess I'm hearing Indigenous graduation rates are falling, but also that's the only example that we can use of gaps narrowing. So that seems contradictory to me. And a 1% improvement, is that what we're aiming for? A 1% improvement when we have significant disparities in these populations? What would we consider to be a success?
Through you, Madam Chair, I'll start the conversation because I think Trustee Kaplan-Murphy raised a very valuable point. As recently as this afternoon, senior staff were talking about the notion of our own indicators, markers, targets, or goals for both achievement and well-being. Setting a quantitative number to that is a complex process. It's not in terms of actually setting it, but ensuring we have the strategies in place to see ourselves to that kind of improvement over time is. That's something that staff is looking at, something that we haven't had quantitatively in place. And there are cautions to target setting, but there are also advantages as well. And then the actual number that's set really depends on where you're coming from, where we think of the numbers that you described in a few of the sites that you referenced, setting an achievable target that is something that schools can strive towards and the system can strive towards isn't too hard. There's lots of room for growth. When you're at the other end of the spectrum, it's a lot harder to make gains because of the ceiling effect that takes place. If we look at it as a number of people like Douglas Reeves looks at it in quartiles, we've got lots of room to be able to grow. So no, the target of 1% isn't necessarily where we'll be at, but we do want to find some kind of a quantitative value that is reasonable and will also leave us in building momentum for further growth beyond that. So it's a really valid point. It's something we're looking to put into play for our next year's plan of action, work plan for staff. A very valuable comment made.
Thank you. That's all.
All right. Thank you, Trustee Kaplan-Murphy. I have Trustee Forti, and then I have Trustee Presley.
I'm going to get into the weeds a little bit here. I am a big fan of the OYAP program. Used to be a carpentry instructor, so I've taught quite a few students that have gone through the program. So amazing to see that there's a 35% increase in students taking advantage of this program. I'm curious if you have a makeup of the students that are participating. And also, what are we doing to encourage more of our female students to get involved in trades education? Yeah, just looking at that.
Through you, Chair. So I can speak, when you say the makeup of, do you mean the demographic characteristics of the students? So in appendix, I believe it's C, yes, appendix C, near the end of the report at table 2, we've got a full demographic breakdown of the students. Now, not specifically for the apprenticeship program, but combined students that are enrolled in at least one of SHISM, OYAP, or the Youth Apprenticeship Program. That cohort of students are disaggregated by the data there.
And in regards, sorry, in regards to the second half of the question, I'm actually going to ask Assistant Principal Coleman to speak on that.
Thank you. Great question. Thank you. We are absolutely looking for development of programming for our women. So we specifically have a We Build a Dream project. It's a ministry initiative that we've taken on, and we had 400 of our young women attend a OYAP and Apprenticeship Exploration Day. And many of those have gone on to sign into OYAP programming pieces. We also have Women in Welding that has been happening, and that goes throughout the school year, and they do extend into some welding camps over the summer. So We're looking, in addition to more of the student voice piece, having the conversation with our young women, asking what they are looking at for an apprenticeship piece and how we can fit that need. So not looking at just putting something into place that's a one-day exploration piece, but a true experiential learning opportunity that is in alignment with their pathway and their individualized goals. We are also starting in September, which is really exciting. The School Within a Trade will be starting, and that is a collaboration with Construction Local Union 93, where our students will be attending school there in the morning and then attaching to apprenticeship. And we have probably 25% of our applicants are female. So very good trending upwards movement of our young women in apprenticeship and trades.
I'm really happy to hear that. And do we have a partnership with Skills Ontario at all? Because I know some of the other districts have great involvement with Skills Ontario, participating in some of the initiatives they have, and some great competitions that they do with students as well.
Absolutely. We have been looking at Skills Ontario. We haven't participated in the last few years. It is a very cost prohibitive piece. We also didn't find that it had a value necessarily as it connected to our Ottawa community partners. You are taking a large number of students to Toronto for a one-day event, whereas we're looking at building a Skills Ottawa in collaboration with our Catholic Coterminous Board, and we will be conducting and having those regional competitions that will be starting next year again. And then if we want to extend into Skills Ontario, we can, but the value added, having more of our students engaged with a localized regional competition and having them connected to our community partnerships, which hopefully will build a pathway connection and a network piece that we would not have if we were engaging in the Skills Ontario Toronto event.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Trustee Forte. Trustee Presley?
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you. I just want to extend my gratitude to staff for their work on this report. And I also just wanted to share my experience in response to Trustee Kaplan-Murth's questions, which I completely understand and appreciate the intent of, with improving our graduation rates and readiness preparedness for the future. 1% may not seem like a lot. I will take 1% over no percent. Also, I've been very grateful to serve as one of the trustee members for the Supervised Alternative Learning Program, and we've had quite a few applications this year. And I see the absolute commitment and dedication from our staff and educators in supporting these students to reach their credit accumulation. And I would just want to say thank you. And I'd highly encourage any trustee who's looking to learn a little bit more on how we serve students that might otherwise, for lack of a better term, fall through the cracks. Encourage them to sit as the Supervised Alternative Learning Trustee for next year, because it is a really valuable program, and I'm very proud of our district for doing that. And I think it's a great learning experience for all trustees. So thank you to staff for implementing that.
All right, thank you, Trustee Presley. Continuing down my speakers list, Anthony, please go ahead.
Through you, the chair, digging deeper into the report, the hard work of the staff and the report. In the report, the Indigenous and special ed grade 10 students are less likely to graduate. Any data on the special programs versus community schools, and maybe that represents an opportunity for future data collection?
So for this particular report, we've not done that level of disaggregation in terms of what it looks like for special programs.
Okay. And then with higher Indigenous and special ed participation in job skills programs, which is a possible keystone for future success, are success rates in these programs being measured or going to be measured specifically for these target groups?
So again, for this particular report, it has been focused on enrollment of the students in terms of the level of engagement. It definitely, the exploration of students achieving the credits is something that we want to be able to continue to explore. Thank you.
Okay. What strategies is in place to address deficits in graduation rates in Section 4.3 for Indigenous and disabilities to reflect the duty to accommodate?
Thank you for that question. It's a really, really important question. And I can't remember where I was or where I heard this today, but someone said the numbers tell us a lot of information, but they don't tell us why. And I have a terrible memory, so the fact that that stuck says something. The why for us, we have to capture by talking to the students. As a group of adults, we can sit around the table and come up with different plans to put in place that we think is going to work for them, but we can miss the mark quite easily. So our work, and we have significantly increased our work with student voice this year. We'll continue on that for next year. In our initial thinking, and I'm thinking specifically in pathways of the Indigenous graduation rates, is working directly with the Indigenous team, community, and speaking directly with students to find out from them what's the barrier, where are they seeing challenges, where do they see access points, how can we make those access points bigger, and how can we start to get very creative with developing opportunities to overcome those barriers and, to be honest, remove those barriers.
Thank you. How is the identified aggregated IEP data meaningfully tied and analyzed to the job skill programs for success? This perhaps represents an opportunity to do better.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure that I understand the question. So for the IEP data, so the students that are identified in the appendices at the end where we disaggregate by identity, when we say special education excluding gifted, students with an IEP would be included in that group.
Oh. Um, Possibly. I'm not sure. Not sure I'm grasping myself if moving on. Okay. And then what strategy is in place to reduce eliminate systemic barriers of access enrollment in senior math and science courses to special education needs students? Can something be done as early as the elementary level?
That's a really big question. I'm going to have to do some more thinking, in terms of the connection with the elementary level. Certainly, there's been a lot of work in recent years within our guidance teams regarding how we are ensuring students are aware of the course options that are available to them, that the pathways that open by taking math and science as they move forward as well. We've also in recent years, and in this I'm talking sort of 5+ years, done significant work in ensuring that we are moving students and families away from thinking they need a certain percentage to access the next course, but to continue, once they've earned the credit, accessing the next course and exploring those pieces as well. We've also, through a number of our Pathways programs, I'm thinking STEM Quest, I know that one was described in the report, have provided more opportunities for students to experience these programs, which may be a short-term event, but to experience these programs, experience success, hopefully identify some interest, and then sign up for the courses as they continue through their high school journey with us.
Mm-hmm. What reviews of how accommodations and transition supports are being implemented following reports in Section 4.5 that special education students report the lowest sense of preparedness for future learning compared to all groups surveyed?
Again, I think on that, I would circle back to what I shared a few minutes ago in terms of those numbers concern us. And anytime that we see students expressing a lower sense of feeling prepared, we want to understand why. And the best way that we can understand why is going out and speaking to them. And we're continuing to expand our practices in going directly to the students to find out how they understand the question and what they meant when they communicated that to us, so that we can take a look at the programming we offer, see what barriers are in place, and do everything we can to remove them.
Given that special education and related Indigenous needs are both presented consistently of concern in this report, could the matter be presented in greater detail directly to the SAAC annually, or a matter of great interest to the committee?
Absolutely. We are on the SEAC agenda for June the 18th, and we'll be bringing this report alongside the previous two learning reports as one whole package for discussion at that time.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Anthony. We have first-time speakers from the trustees, so I will go to Trustee Scott and then continue down my community partner speaker list.
Thank you for the report. I was heartened to hear the comments about making more of STEAM instead of sticking only to STEM. I find that really encouraging for two reasons. One is that I think there are different ways of thinking that attach to science and math and engineering from the ways of thinking that attach to many of the arts. I think it's time that people in the arts learned more of the science, engineering, and math and technology piece, so that they can incorporate those in their artistic work. And I also think that exposure to more of the arts would help the people who are involved more on the other side of mostly in the STEM work, to enlarge their thinking. So I see that as a very positive thing. And they also have to learn how to talk to each other. And let's face it, they don't always speak each other's language. But with that said, one of the things that I see coming throughout the report is reference to, this is an impactful thing. This is impactful for students. And what I'd like to know is how we measure impactful. Because is it a matter of we're just counting up that we have more students enrolling in certain things, because that can carry its own risks as well? Or is there something else that tells us that a particular new program is impactful? How do we know?
It's a really great question. In regards to the Student Achievement Plan report that we provide to the ministry, a lot of the information that they're requiring us to report on is enrollment. So we're seeing greater enrollment. And to be perfectly frank, that is the entry point for all of us. If they're not participating in it, then the experience isn't going to create any change. We don't stop at enrollment, because that, again, is our entry-level piece. We're looking at the number of students who are participating. We are speaking to the students to find out why they're participating. The team in Pathways has done incredible work to ensure that any of the Pathways programming is as cross-curricular as we can get it to be right now. And so working with classroom teachers to look at how is that experience being connected to the curricular learning in the classroom, and through that, various assessments and evaluations that they're gaining through that as well. So we are taking a look at what level of achievement students are having in their classes. Credit accumulation is a natural one that we look to as well. But also in talking to the students, finding out how this is impacting them, how this is changing the thinking for their trajectory and their pathway. In many cases, what we're hearing from the students is they're seeing options before them that they thought were closed. Things that they thought would never happen for them are now open because of some of these experiences. So we're looking at the qualitative pieces as well as some of the quantitative pieces as well. And we do that not only through conversations, but also through surveys that we send to staff to find out what they're seeing differently about students, about the students that they're teaching rather, and also to students to capture some of their experience as well. And something we've been talking about, I've been having some conversations with principals on some different pieces. Principals reaching out to parents and finding out what are you seeing different with your child in this experience. So we're finding out at home what is changing for young people in this area as well. So it is a balance of qualitative and quantitative data that we're gathering.
Thank you for that. The other thing I wanted to ask about relates to the concept of closing the gaps and what should we be targeting in terms of increases in the metrics demonstrating success in what we're trying to do here. It concerns me that it's not just the gaps themselves that we need to close. But I frankly, given the population that we serve and the nature of the total community in Ottawa, I really do believe that we could be doing better overall than we are. And I don't want us to lose sight of the fact that it is, we need to put extra resources, extra effort and different strategies in place for many groups within the total demographic, but I think we also can't afford to forget that just because a school has a really good percentage of students achieving at the provincial standard doesn't mean it couldn't do better the next year. So what are we doing to support that?
Thank you. So I think there's a couple of things that I'll mention, and I feel like there's so much to unpack about what you were saying, because I absolutely agree. I think that when we look at the work that's being done to try to really narrow some of those gaps, there's a particular way in which I want to be looking at the data over time as well. So in relation to some of the comments earlier, and I missed the opportunity to clarify that I think at some points we were talking about the way that we identify students being on track to graduate and graduation rates. So where we see the narrowing of the gap for students who identify as Indigenous, that's in terms of credit accumulation, and that's being on track to graduate. We actually see the gap getting a little bit wider when we're looking at graduation rates. So the focused work that's been done that Superintendent Laverne was talking about in terms of experiential learning opportunities to earn those credits, we see the impact of that in grade 10 at the credit accumulation. And so that's where we're hopeful that when this cohort of students gets to grade 12, we'll see that increase reflected in the graduation rates there. But that's not to say we're not also focused on getting the students that are currently in grade 12 to that point of graduation. So that notion of a tailored strategy, I think, is so critical. And I think that's where the data support model that we have, where we have research officers paired with individual schools to make sure that we not only have district-wide strategies outlined in our board priority learning plan, but that we have these school priority learning plans as well, where schools have a target group of students and a target strategy. When we look at the data from this report, for example, and we look at the OEAP, SHISM, and dual credit, and the increase in students taking that, and how we have an overrepresentation of students from most of our identified groups, with the exception of multilingual learners. Okay, that's a target area for next year. Why is it that multilingual learners aren't engaging in these programs as often? And I think that when we try to get more precise in our strategies like that as a district, we see that reflected in the overall numbers as well. And as Director Buffoni mentioned earlier, we are having lots of conversations right now around targets and markers and what that might look like. One of my concerns with setting targets at a district level is that it's easy to catch the students who are close to meeting the standard, to get them over the edge. And is that necessarily the best use of our resources and supports in terms of a strategy, or does that help us make the numbers look good for the next report? And we really want to make sure that we're being as effective as possible with the way in which that we're using this data to inform the supports for kids and not just trying to get you good numbers to bring in a report.
Thank you. I think the using the data, particularly at the school level, has been really crucial to some of the improvements we're seeing. I just hope we see more. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Trustee Scott. Continuing down my first-time trustee speakers list, I have Trustee Jenkins.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the report. I'm just looking in Appendix C, Table 5, Preparedness for Future Learning. Grade 6, it shows 58%, grade 9, 64%. What is that in comparison to the provincial? Did you provide that comparison already? I mean, are we on?
I don't have those numbers at my fingertips, but I can easily get those for you. I have them.
I personally just find that it's a little low, like that many students are still unprepared for the next grade, for the next, what do we do to support our students in making good choices?
So overall, we know that our numbers are comparable to the province. It's just in terms of that disaggregation that I don't have the provincial disaggregate. We wouldn't have the provincial disaggregation for the full demographic breakdown from our Valuing Voices data, but some of that system level, we would be able to get provincial numbers to make comparisons to do a little bit more investigating there. But the trends that we're seeing are relatively on par. For elementary, we do see for grade 6, our numbers are the same as the province. They're both 58. For grade 9, we're slightly lower, and for grade 10, we're slightly higher. So it's relatively comparable.
And in terms of what we can do to try to increase that, we have very much been evolving our approach to experiential learning in recent years to shift away from events, which are great. There's nothing wrong with an event, but it's an event, to embedding that within the classroom. And the way we think about that is very much looking at authentic learning. So what does that curricular expectation or the expectations they're working on look like outside the classroom? So we're taking it from the theoretical approach within the classroom to the practical approach outside the classroom and helping students see that connection. That connection is extremely important, but also to start to toe dip into what it really looks like in practice. It's authentic and it becomes more personalized and meaningful for them. And the feedback we're hearing from students, that's helping them understand why this learning is important and how it's helping prepare them for the pathway that they're choosing.
Thank you. I'm also very supportive of our apprenticeship program, and considering what we're hearing in the news recent, where students are really struggling to find jobs, I think that our apprenticeship program is really important. Are we, and correct me if I'm wrong, is there 2 or 3 levels for our apprentice? And I seem to recall this conversation with the previous, in previous years, where potential employers, their preferences maybe more the level 1, or are we finding success with all levels of our apprentices?
So I'll start.
In finding work for them.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll start and I'll ask Assistant Principal Coleman to jump in because there's a point where my knowledge base will fall off. We are seeing incredible success for our students that are engaged in apprenticeship. All of our students that are working in apprenticeship are working on their level 1 with us. More often than not, that results in a connection with an employer or a trade union that they connect with to continue moving forward with their level 2 and level 3. So the vast majority complete their level 2 and level 3 once they leave us. But what we found is the positive experience they've had, and of course earning their level 1 while they're with us, has created a hook for them. That this is their passion, this is where they want to extend to, so that they do continue with that. And we have seen as well where students are hired through those experiences as well.
All right, thank you, Trustee Jenkins. I have a growing trustee speakers list. So I have Trustee Dixon, and then I have second-time trustees, and then I have community partners. So Trustee Dixon, please go ahead.
Through you, Chair. Just to touch on what my colleague said, how many of our students that go through the apprentice are actually being hired by the employers? Like, I don't see a percentage because I hear from some students that when they finish, they don't even accumulate enough hours to actually get a job. And I think
Point of order. I'm having a hard time hearing. The susurrus behavior around the table is making it difficult to focus.
Okay, thank you, Trustee Lyra. I'm sure we can all keep our chatter to a minimum so that we can continue. Please continue, Trustee Dixon.
because I've heard that a lot of them, when they finish or they get kicked out of the program before they can actually graduate. And so what are we doing to curtail that? And how are we looking at our community partners to make sure and guarantee that they're not having them come in and, be the cleaner and the coffee runner? Because that's very important from community.
There's been a lot of work and a lot of ongoing work with our co-op teachers who are the contacts for students who are in apprenticeships. And they have been doing exceptional work at intervening when things don't necessarily go as planned. And that's life. Things don't go as planned sometimes. So rather than jumping to stopping the experience, working with the employer to see how to ensure that is a better experience, unless we see that this isn't going to work, in which case our goal is always to make sure we connect the student to the best experience possible. Co-op teachers also work really closely with the employer to make sure that the expectations of what the student is going to do are very clear at the beginning. And co-op teachers visit co-op placements on a constant basis to monitor. It's part of their assessment and evaluation process as well, and to ensure that those plans are being put in place. Centrally, our central apprenticeship and co-op teachers have been reaching out more and more to community to extend the partnerships we have conversations with them about what this would look like to make sure that there's a shared understanding of what co-op and apprenticeships look like. Also to make sure that we're connecting students with programming that they're interested in and that they're comfortable in. So if a student is looking to work in an environment that is Arabic speaking, we're working to make sure that we have those partnerships and connections so that that's very easy to connect them to, that there's no stumbling blocks along the way. So we have a series of strategies in place to do our very best. Does it always work? No. And do all students get hired? No, but we do have a very high success rate in co-op, and we do have a number of students that we have heard from who have been hired through this process.
I'd really like to see the numbers to see exactly how many of our students are being hired from the co-op placement that they are put in, because they spend a lot of time in there. So it'd be really good to see those numbers, because it's nice to hear that they're getting hired and they're learning, but that's not what you hear when you go into the community. So I'd really like to see the numbers.
We can certainly look into that. That would be a manual collection. So we'd have to look at how we would do that, and the accuracy we couldn't guarantee, but we can do some thinking about that, take that back and see what we can do about that.
All right, thank you, Trustee Dixon. So continuing down, I have second time trustee speakers, and then we'll go to our community partners. So Trustee Jenkins, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. And sorry, I should have asked this before. With respect to our special needs students, and I guess it really is more the co-op programs versus the apprentice, do we provide support for our special needs students within that co-op experience? Because a lot of times for our special needs student, that understanding, that routine, that continued routine, this is what you do here, this is what you do there. Do we offer that for our special needs students?
Yes, and we have for many, many years. Who the student is, their strengths, their needs, their goals, what they want to achieve through it are foundational in any cooperative education experience. And the supports they need to access that are provided. It may be a scaffolded approach, and it may be over some time that is provided. So, for example, if a student has never been on the bus before, we're going to provide support to help them experience that, learn how to use the bus, and be able to get to their destination safely. So depending on where their need is, we do provide those supports, but yes, absolutely, schools provide that.
Thank you. I mean, I will give a shout out to Giant Tiger because they're very good at supporting special needs students. And even with a simple task like how to, put products on a shelf. And it's that repetition that really enforces understanding of what the role is. And then it provides a lot more understanding of shopping. And like there's so much more that goes into that experience. So I'm really happy to know that.
All right, thank you, Trustee Jennings. Going back to our community partners, I have Jason and then Lily Miller. Jason, please go ahead.
Through you, Madam Chair. My question has to do in terms of student learning, student achievement, and sort of looking at the pathways in respect to apprenticeship and more so the specialized program. Could you discuss what sort of criteria is administration looking at when it comes to new opportunities and partnerships? And in regard to the expansion of the program, you talked about some students not being able to get co-op placements. And I know that obviously there's tiers of places where people want to go. If you have a Google, everybody wants to sort of go with Google, et cetera, Microsoft. So in terms of expansion, what are you trying to do to expand? And what are you doing to make it more accessible? Because it would appear that these programs co-op programs are becoming a little more popular due to the hands-on experiential learning piece. And where do you envision those programs to go in the future?
It's a great question. I think I'll start with something actually that's coming up, and then we'll speak a little bit more. And I may ask System Principal Coleman to jump in on that as well, because I know the team works diligently to develop those partnerships. But an example of how a partnership can be developed, or a partnership that we are developing, we were contacted by the Canada North Business Association. To build, they wanted to connect with us. And through that process, we built a relationship with them where students from the district are going to be able to go to the Canada North area. They are actually purpose building a space for our students to go to work with the business leaders in that area. And it's the business leaders who wish to participate, but the desire to participate is very, very high. To engage with the students in a variety of different types of experiences, which will ultimately be connected to co-op experiences. The students will have opportunities to explore the different problems of practice that the different businesses are engaging in, and work with the businesses to help resolve those problems rather. Sorry, my words are starting to fail me. So again, very authentic and very meaningful for them. In terms of connecting students to co-op placements, it's very much connected to what the student is interested, what they want to do, how they want to explore. The co-op teachers work diligently to make sure that they can connect students to co-op placements. There aren't endless placements, but they do work really quite diligently to make sure that they connect students to something that is of interest. We don't want the students going to something just because. We want it to be something that is of interest to them, that is connected to their in-school learning and supports their pathway learning as well. I think I'll pass it to Assistant Principal Coleman to speak more about the partnership development.
I was just going to say that we have, I'm going to brag about our students in our OCDSB for a little bit. We've had a number of experiential opportunities that we have created that are prolonged opportunities, or not episodic. The Learning Take Flight at the Aviation Museum is a prime example. There was a problem of practice that was built over 6 weeks. Students were engaged with industry partners. When they came to the demonstration of the learning piece with their industry partners, our community partners were blown away by what our students could do. We had a young man from Earl of March, we'll shut him out, but he worked on a drone development piece that when Transport Canada saw what he completed, they said he actually solved their problem, a federal problem that they were looking at for noise pollution with drones. They created a co-op placement for him. So the experiential learning and what we're bringing into our community is actually showing our community what we can do and what our students can do. And it's a reciprocal relationship now. We're providing a high quality education experience and a student who has very well-rounded exposure to many different areas, they're bringing it into industry. And it's coming back to us in co-op placements and in OYAP placements. I will also add that the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, that has been a partnership we've been trying to break into for 20 years. They've been working with Construction Union and our students and see the value. They've actually changed their collective agreement so that now we can take co-op students in the electrical union. So we have 40 students that have placements in co-op for next year for those pieces. So showcasing through experiential learning, it really highlights our students. They don't think that high school students are able to provide some of the critical thinking and analytical skills that our students are able to, and we are creating certainly many more opportunities in our community.
All right, thank you, Jason. Is there anything else you would like to add? All right, thank you, Jason. Lily Miller, please go ahead.
I'm here. Yeah, I really appreciate these this data, and I'm looking at the students who are on track to graduate with their credits, and I liked what you were saying about asking the students, asking the Indigenous education team, what are the barriers? How can we overcome the barriers? Since this is not a new problem that we're seeing here, I'm wondering if you have, over the years, asked these questions already. What kind of barriers have you found out? And are you tracking what has been working and what has not been working? And collecting that data as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that question. Yes, and acknowledging right from the top, we have a road to go still on this. We have a lot of work to do. But there are a couple of pieces that we've seen quite a bit of success in. One is using our Authentic Student Learning Experience tool. That is a tool that, again, connects what the student is doing outside the classroom with what they're doing inside the classroom. In many cases, it starts with what they're doing outside the classroom to create that engagement within the classroom and build that confidence within the student to be successful, and often results in a re-engagement with school that way. We also have, we have 3 SWAC, which is School Within a College classes that run out of Algonquin College. One of them is preserved for Indigenous students. It has been full every year since we started offering that, and every Indigenous student who has entered that program has successfully graduated through high school. All of the students who entered that program were at extreme risk of not graduating high school. They have all graduated and have all connected to a pathway of their choice. And the success of that program is very much starting with the student, their strengths, their needs, what they are engaged in, what they are interested in, and using that information to start to connect to credits and then build their learning from that point forward. So rather than, and I'm going to provide sort of an extreme, but rather than come into this classroom, sit down at this desk and do this work, which is not meaningful to them, their learning is driven by their interests, their goals, their choices, their strengths, and their areas of growth. I don't want to make it sound like we disregard those pieces, but by focusing on their interests and strengths, the educators are able to support them in developing through their areas of growth. Most importantly, their confidence builds. And all of those students have connected to the pathway of their choice afterwards. So those are some learnings that we have captured through the programming we have provided.
Thank you for that. That sounds a lot like the alternative schools program that my nephew, had great success in. How do we ensure that this is not just distributed by the Indigenous education team, that this kind of teaching is widespread. So because our Indigenous students are right across the city.
So that's a fantastic question. Certainly, the Indigenous Learning Team are exceptional partners with us in supporting students. But I can actually say that those two, using the ASLE is often done through student success teachers and other support teachers in schools who may or may not be a part of the Indigenous team. Most of them are not. And the Indigenous SWAC as well is something that is ran and supported through program services. So we have really good practices in place right now to make sure that is spread, because we want to make sure, as you said, that this is not just a small group of people supporting the students, because they're not going to be able to get to all of them. We want to spread this out so that all students in all of our schools and the Indigenous students in all of our schools are able to access these learning opportunities.
All right, thank you, Lily, and thank you everyone for a very fruitful discussion. It is 9:05, so I'm going to call a 5-minute break. So if everyone can be back at 9:10, and we will have our next report up for discussion. Thank you very much. Okay, I am seeing quorum slowly making their way to the seats and in the room so we can get started. So I'm now going to call upon the director to present report 25-031 Math Achievement Action Plan report. Director, please go ahead.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, I'll turn it over to Superintendent Major and System Principal Massey, as well as our Manager in Program Services, Wagner, for an update on our Math Achievement Action Plan.
Good evening, trustees. This is our third update on the Mathematics Achievement Action Plan. Tonight, I'll briefly highlight our progress and share what's next as we continue to strengthen math learning across the district. This year, over 800 educators participated in more than 115 professional learning sessions. These focused on deepening math knowledge and strengthening teaching practices to better support all learners, particularly Indigenous students, multilingual learners, and those with special education needs. A strong emphasis was placed on making math meaningful and accessible by using culturally responsive teaching, hands-on and collaborative learning, and drawing on students' first languages and lived experiences. With the support of our math coaches, the OCDSB numeracy assessment tool, and our culturally responsive and relevant pedagogy guide, we're seeing real classroom shifts. Educators are feeling more confident and using more student-centered interactive strategies. Our early intervention projects are also helping educators better identify student needs and adjust instruction, leading to more effective accommodations and less reliance on modifications. The shift is positively impacting students. More students, especially in grades 3 and 9, are showing a growth mindset, believing that they can improve in math. This is key to building persistence and achievement. In grade 6, we noticed a decline in confidence and in enjoyment. So in response, we're working with our educators to make math more relevant, integrate peer discussions, and use hands-on tools to boost engagement and understanding. Of note, our mid-year ONAT results are very promising. Number sense scores rose 12% in grade 3 and 7% in grade 6. 55% of students who started below level 2 have already improved following targeted support. And 57% of our grade 9 students in ministry-identified schools raised their math marks between midterm and final reports. So there's no question, our professional learning is making a difference. Our classrooms are more inclusive, teaching is more relevant, and students are gaining skills and confidence. But we know there's more work needed to sustain this progress, to ensure consistent practices, and to ensure that across all schools, we are closing achievement gaps. So moving forward, here are some of the areas that we'll be focusing on. First of all, extending support beyond the 40% of schools reached this year. This will allow us to share the expertise more broadly and strengthen collaboration across the district, building on that system-wide capacity. We also want to keep a strong focus on culturally responsive teaching and on early intervention, especially for those students who are underserved. This is all about making sure that students can access the full curriculum through effective accommodations and by consistently checking their progress. We're also looking at improving tools like the ONAT and our data dashboards to help educators track progress and respond quickly. Finally, we'll continue strengthening collaboration, both among schools and with our families, to ensure that every student can succeed in math. To bring this work to life, we'd like to take you inside our classrooms. We believe this video will provide a powerful illustration of the very initiatives and positive changes we've outlined in our report.
Math isn't exactly fun for me, but it is really cool when I get like a brain blast moment and I figure something out that I'm not used to figuring out on my own. I'm still not confident in myself, but Mr. C is always confident in me and that really helps.
Welcome to our math classrooms, where curiosity sparks discovery and every question leads to new learning. Here, students build the skills to tackle challenges with confidence, while their unique experiences and ideas are valued. More than just teaching math, we're creating a sense of belonging, where every student sees themselves as capable, confident, and part of a growing community of math learners. Math isn't just about finding the right answer. It's about the process of getting there. We encourage students to share their ideas and learn from one another. Our educators guide them, helping them see that there are many ways to solve a problem. We value each student's ideas and unique perspectives, making their contributions an important part of the solution. Math comes to life when students talk, question, and explain their thinking. We create spaces where curiosity is encouraged and where different ideas are valued. It's not about doing math quickly. It's about fully understanding it. By celebrating all the ways students think about and approach math, we help them see how their experiences are an important part of learning.
So you think this is bigger?
No, it's gonna get bigger.
You have to estimate which container do you think will have the greatest capacity? Which one? Oh, that's A. This one, or this one?
B, I said A. B. Let me B.
Math is more than just numbers. It's about building, creating, and solving real-world problems. Through hands-on activities, students experience math in action, making it more accessible, engaging, and relevant. They discover how math connects to their lives, communities, and future opportunities. This is what math looks like in action. Students working together to solve problems, engaging in exciting discussions, and learning through hands-on activities. Our educators set high expectations while providing the right support to ensure every student feels valued, challenged, and capable of achieving great things. We're not just teaching math, we're building confidence, resilience, and a love for learning. This video truly captures, I believe, the shift in action. Engaged learners, confident educators, and inclusive, effective instruction. I think it's a powerful reminder of what we can achieve when we align our focus and center our students. Thank you. And I'd like to give a quick shout out to Mike, who is a former OCDSB student who created that video.
All right, thank you. And for those, oh, there we go. Now we can hear it. So round of applause. Thank you very much. And I know the report was super engaging as well, although not as engaging as the video. So I am looking forward to the discussions. So to start, I have Trustee Lara, then Trustee Kaplan-Mers.
Thanks. So I've only got a couple of questions. My first one is about the digital math tools. I'm concerned that digital math tools is code for AI, and given AI's propensity for hallucinations as it relates to math, I'm a little bit concerned. Could you expand on the digital math tools that are being used and perhaps reassure me that they are not AI-based?
Thank you for the question. I'll pass that over to Stephen Massey, Assistant Principal.
Through you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the question, Trustee Lyra. We use a variety of ministry-approved digital tools, so there is an extensive review of those tools at the provincial level. We use that list. We use tools like Knowledge Hook, which is a database, an interactive database programmed by educators. and lots of consultation with school boards and well used around the province. We use Mathia and MathUp, very, very similar programs. Desmos as well too is used in our intermediate and secondary classrooms. And so any interface with AI is used through board approved portals like Gemini and through the OCDSB. So none of our students or staff are used nefariously to train the AI. And certainly others more qualified than me can speak about that, but the digital tools that we are using are approved and have excellent resource input from educators.
I'm glad to know that they are approved. I would love confirmation, it doesn't have to be now, that they're not rooted in generative AI, that is some kind of database of existing problems and there's an interactive lookup method. I am concerned that we would be teaching students incorrect math if it is based on generative AI. My second group of questions, and sorry, that doesn't have to be now, just sending a letter along at the end or at some point in the future would be great. My second group of questions is around math instructional coaches. The report talks about how we have 14 instructional coaches and they cover 140 classrooms. I'm wondering if that is perceived to be enough to meet the demand. And I'm wondering if that is perceived to be enough to move the needle. Do you understand what I mean by the question?
Thanks for the question, Trustee Lara. I would never say no to additional resources, particularly math instructional coaches, given the wonderful work that they do engaging in that job-embedded side-by-side learning and support of teachers. We have been very blessed this year to have had 14 coaches to work to support the number of ministry priority schools that we have. Next year, we will have a decreased number of coaches. And as we always do, we will look at creative solutions in terms of how we can continue to meet the needs and demands of our schools and in working to support our students.
Okay. I guess my follow-up question would be, do you feel the number of positions that are going to be available next year are going to meet the needs or move the needle when it comes to math achievement outcomes? Perhaps as a question for the director?
Sure. Through you, Madam Chair, in thinking about your question, I think that the instructional coach support that we put in place plays a role. It plays a role in supporting our educators, as Superintendent Major has pointed out, and Assistant Principal Massey as well. It's not the only support in moving the needle. And I doubt, or if I reframe this, in all my time here in Ottawa-Carleton, including in some of the roles of the reports you've seen this evening, there's never been enough central support. I don't think we need to hang our hat on that strategy alone. We've got to mobilize the central support to help work with educators in the system to move that needle. The number one factor by far that makes the difference in moving the needle is the educator in front of the student at any given point in time. So in short, the answer would be no. There'd never be enough central support, but we also have to be careful that the central support actually does support and not disable what's happening in the classroom. And I have a lot of faith in our educators that that's not the case class to class to class, but we certainly don't have enough coach support even this year to be doing elbow to elbow work with every single educator. So we'll continue to try to find the right balance. You understand full well that this is always discussion that's well beyond the pedagogical into the reality of our budget and how much we actually have to be able to distribute. And we'll try to find the best balance we can across all of our pressing needs, numeracy, literacy, and other.
Really glad you mentioned the budget, because the reason I had asked the question is that the ministry has come out and said that math is one of their priorities, and they have allocated, according to this report, $76,305. And that to me does not feel like it's meeting the needs on the math achievement front for our district. And so I was looking to get an answer that we are not being funded adequately to meet the math needs of the district.
Trustee Lyra, I appreciate the question. That is better suited for budget though than it is for tonight. And we have asked, you have asked and we have answered. We've had staff answer the question at this time.
Okay. My last question was around the 2025-2026 math achievement, the 2025-2026 map. Do you feel that the OCDSB numeracy assessment tool is going to be refined, I guess, in time and with the sufficiency to give us more accurate data, better data? What is the intention of refining it? And what do we hope to achieve over the 2025-2026 year?
Thanks for the question. So the ONAT has been very helpful this year in terms of gathering data around where students are in relation to their number sense skills. And it's given us some real in-time data, beginning of year data, middle of year data, and right now we're waiting to collect the last vestiges of our end of year data. And so far what we've seen is definitely that we're on the right path and we're moving forward. In terms of refining the ONAT, what we're looking at is really considering moving past grades 3 and 6 in terms of the collection of the information. We've had a number of staff who have expressed an interest in wanting to use the ONAT because they see it as a very wonderful tool in terms of progress monitoring. And so we're going to be meeting very shortly around what's happened this year, how helpful it's been, what have been some of the kinks, and thinking about how can we extend its use in terms of other grades and possibly as well scaling it to other schools. And so we'll be looking at those two options in the upcoming school year.
So when you're talking about expanding to other grades, does that mean you're going to look at cohort tracking the existing students that we have and expanding it to years, like other cohorts as time goes on? Or would you just jump from grades 3 and 6 to like maybe grades 3 and 6 and 9? I'm a little bit unclear which of those two you meant.
We were looking more so in terms of a continuum.
Okay, cohort tracking. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Trustee Lyra. Trustee Kaplan-Murth.
Thank you, through you, Chair. The video was very heartwarming, but the data is not. And so I think there's a disconnect. When we look at even our numeracy results for grades 3 and 6, that's not impressive. If we look at the EQAO results, we can look at actually comparing the different boards in the Ottawa area. The French school board has 62% of students meeting the provincial average. The Catholic school board has 57% in grade 9, meeting the provincial average. OCDSB has 55%, meeting the provincial average. That's just meeting the provincial average. Should we not be 100% of us at the provincial average? Which it doesn't necessarily mean that those students are stellar mathematicians, but it's the average. So I guess my question is, looking at statements, whether or not students say they like math or they're good at math. Yes, it is actually important, especially for young women and other groups of marginalized students who might have otherwise dropped out of math by the end of high school. It is important that they feel that they like math and that they're good at math. But in fact, they're not good at math, according to our own data. So what are we going to do to address that?
Thank you, Trustee Kaplan-Murth. Before we hand it to staff on the other side, the director would like to respond.
I think, Trustee Kaplan-Murth, you're raising a number of important points that staff, again, as early as today and once to twice a week for the past number of months have been looking at a couple of key points. I won't belabor this, but I will speak to two items. One is strategic simplification, that we as an organization are spread so thin in so many areas that we have to regroup. We have to focus on achievement and well-being. That's got to be our sole focus, and everything else has to support that dual focus. I don't need to tell you that's not the case here. We are distracted beyond belief, chasing down responses to things that are well beyond our control. And I will even say that's in some of the positional structure we have. So couldn't agree more with you, Trustee Kaplan-Murphy. Staff will be in the move forward, looking for the Board of Trustees' support as we reposition ourselves towards achievement and well-being, because the data is clear that we are not making gains in those areas like we should, could, and would if we focused in on achievement and well-being.
Thank you. I think
Trustee Kaplan-Murphy, do you think there's a response from that side, and then we can hand it back to you?
I can appreciate the concerns that you've raised, Trustee Kaplan-Murphy, and certainly this is the work. This is the work that we are deeply embedded in right now. We're pleased to be able to say that we've received some preliminary information regarding our grade 9, our first semester grade 9 EQAO results. And although we're not able to share specific details in regards to that because that's only semester 1, and we need to look at the aggregate year, we're really pleased to say that we have definitely seen some improvement, some good improvement overall in regards to that grade 9 EQAO pieces. And in terms of the grades 3 and 6, we're really hopeful based on what we've been seeing this year and the work that we've been doing this year and the capacity that we've been building this year to be seeing more of an upward trend in terms of the that big data, that EQAO data.
Okay, thank you. Well, I think that it's pretty important that, you know, not just that we encourage students to want, you know, to say that they like math, or to even be creative with how we're teaching math. What we need at the end, by the end of their education, from kindergarten to grade 12, what we need is for us to have a society that is both, you know, educated in terms of literacy and numeracy, and can go on to post-secondary education. And it doesn't do us any kind of service as a society if we are producing students who can't do basic arithmetic, let alone understand more complex concepts and apply those then to real life situations. So I think that we need to see some improvements in that regard.
All right, thank you, Trustee Kaplan-Murphy. Continuing down my first time speakers list for trustees, Trustee Scott.
Thank you. One of the things that I'm not hearing and seeing a lot about is what is happening to our youngest students. We look at the EQAO results at grade 3. We are hearing more about some of the testing results than tracking that's happening for literacy in grades 1 and 2. But what's happening in kindergarten for math? Because really that's where a lot of the foundations are being laid. And I think it's really important not to ignore what we're doing with our 4- and 5-year-olds.
Thank you very much for the question, Trustee Scott. This year, we have decided to be doing some work specifically with our younger learners because building those foundational math skills is critical, absolutely critical. We ran kindergarten to grade 2 networks this year, not only for our ministry priority schools, but for 25 additional schools where we had teachers coming in, working together collaboratively, focusing around building those foundational skills in math because most definitely it's critical. As well, we had our 2 early intervention projects, one to support students who were ESL or ELD learners. In addition to that, we also had early math intervention project for students with special education needs. And again, with both of these projects, the focus is around really trying to support students in and being able to access the full curriculum, making sure that those critical skills that may have been missed earlier on, for example, in kindergarten, that we are boosting those skills, boosting the confidence of the students, and really narrowing in on how to best support them without without putting in place modifications. But your first point in terms of the kindergarten piece is absolutely critical, and that remains our focus for the upcoming year.
That's really, really good news from my point of view. I guess the big question I have is, why are we hearing, and I mean, not that I think we shouldn't be hearing about early literacy so much, but why aren't we hearing about early numeracy as well? Is this some form of discrimination against math?
All right, thank you, Trustee Scott. Continuing down my first time speakers list for trustees, Trustee Jenkins.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Trustee Scott, for just bringing awareness to our what are we doing at our kindergarten level. In your Appendix B, and thank you for the report, by the way, sorry. Appendix B, the graph where you're sharing, the percentages for students who like math. And I just find it really concerning that, in grade 3, at the middle of the year, it's 72.3, but by the time they hit grade 6, it substantially drops. Like, what is the difference where it's really dropping quite, where students don't like math?
Thanks so much for the question, and this is of concern to us as well, what's going on at that grade 6 level. Superintendent Laverne spoke earlier about talking to students and connecting with them and hearing from them what are some of the changes and the implications in terms of their confidence at that particular level. We are aware that a dip in confidence is understandable at some level because the students progress through the years. Math becomes harder and becomes more complex. There may be potential shifts in terms of ways in which math is taught, from more hands-on learning to more abstract teaching. And so we have some of those pieces to consider. But yet we'll see the grade 9 results this year have been certainly more promising than the grade 6. So we're really looking at what are the steps we're taking to address some of the needs and to address those pieces around confidence. I think connecting to students' lives, making math relevant, helping students understand how math is important to them, where they see math in their world, and how it connects to who they are as math learners, as an important piece in terms of building math confidence. I was in a grade 9 class the other day, and the students were asked to measure the length of a slope. It was a class where there were a number of multilingual learners. And they were asked to measure the slope of a line. And I don't know if you folks remember that, that math at that point. And as soon as I got into the room, I thought, oh yeah, rise over run. I remember the formula. Anyway, in conversation with the students, because they were working at a vertical surface and they were in a collaborative group and talking about the work that they were doing. And when we approached the students and asked, how are you connecting to this information? Because they seemed to be stumped. They weren't moving on with the task at hand. And the question was asked, do you know what a slope is? And the response was no. That was devastating to hear that. The students had no connection and no understanding around what that slope meant in their everyday life. So we talked about looking outside, looking at that hill as they walk up the hill to go to the bus, right? So making math relevant and connected to students' lives needs to be a piece of the puzzle in terms of building that confidence. I think additionally, through having math conversations, using visual aids, using hands-on materials, that makes math meaningful, that makes math accessible, that makes math understandable. Ensuring that we're sending those clear messages that we believe in the potential of students, right? We believe in who they are. You saw the video. The young man at the very beginning said, I don't have confidence in myself, but Mr. C has confidence in me. that's what's made the difference for them. He was a student who was in a, I think he's at OTSS, right? And he shared that information. So showing that we care, showing that we believe in the potential of a student, showing that that we believe that making mistakes is part of the learning. All of these pieces are critical to supporting students and building that math confidence and making sure that we have those high expectations, and we're supporting students through scaffolds and to support them in reaching those expectations. All of these pieces, I think, are critical in supporting that math confidence and that growing that math mindset.
Thank you. And I appreciate the example of the looking outside, because I remember being a visual learner. And in the video, which was lovely, there was one example where they had the cups and which cup. So things like that really, okay, click, 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 click. I get it now. So I think it's really important. And perhaps then those additional 14 coaches, maybe the focus should really be on these grade 6 or grade 4 to, through grade 6, because there's obviously a disconnect in that area. Anyway, thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Trustee Jennings. Going to our community partners. Anthony, please go ahead.
There we go. Through you, the chair. Thank you for the good work, and based on the guiding questions, the report mentioned a lot about trying to assist the students that are below level 2, so I'll focus on that. How will the district ensure that inclusive and I'm going to be very foundational of my comments and questions. How will the district ensure that inclusive math practices like UDL, DI, and CRRP are consistently implemented, used, and monitored across schools, not just introduced, especially for those performing below level 2?
Thanks for that question. I'm going to pass it over to System Principal Massey for this response.
Thank you very much for the question, and through you, Madam Chair. I think, and we've talked about this at this table before, there's a significant change in the research and change in the provincial curriculum around mathematics over the last 4 years, with the Math Continuum coming in 2020. And we talk about accessibility along that continuum. So you may have a student who is in grade 6, but there may be a concept at grade 2 that is built upon to get access to a particular expectation of learning in grade 6. For the grade 6 teacher, having a good understanding of that continuum can provide some extra support, some direct instructions, small group instruction, some math conversations, a whole myriad of different strategies to help that student understand that particular concept, which then they have access to to understanding grade 6. We see that all the way through. There is a new kindergarten curriculum coming out shortly, we hope, from the ministry. And we expect that it will also follow the continuum, which is grades 1 through 9 now in mathematics. So from a universal design perspective, from an inclusive design perspective, and also from a culturally relevant and responsive, relevant perspective, we want to think through that accessibility lens and that relevance lens that Superintendent Major has referenced. Thank you for the question.
I'm wondering if I can just add a few words to that too. Just in addition, in terms of how we're going to be sort of bridging the gap and ensuring that not just the schools that we've been working with, but across the schools across our district are engaged in this work. The CRRP guide, that particular resource, and our work in terms of UDL, that's work that was done at a system level. And so I think there was the second slide, pardon me, when we talked about sort of district level initiatives. We have engaged our principals at monthly principal learning sessions to support principals around effective practices, to support them in leading in their schools, leading math instruction in their schools. And so all of our principals across our district has been engaged in that work. Additionally, through our PA days, we have been ensuring that we include work around CRRP and UDL so that all of our schools are aware and are learning in this area. In addition to that, we've provided our after-school superintendency sessions where all schools have an opportunity to be able to access that learning. And next year, in terms of our plans, we are working very closely with the literacy department, the program department, around what we are going to be engaging in terms of our professional learning pieces. And CRP and UDL are the bedrock of the work for next year as well. And so this is not a one-off, this is not episodic. This is the grounding that we need as in our system in terms of really looking at how we support all learners across the spectrum.
Thank you. That answers my question also about how it fits into the school learning plan and reviews. Another thought perhaps about support systems, having support systems that confirm IEPs for math in terms of how they're applied properly for level ones. That's like a suggestion. And then also thinking from perspective of SAAC, for the level, those students at below level 2, in other words, level 1, they're not that frequent, but being able to, for SAAC to provide feedback is to, if there could be board level de-identified aggregated IEP reporting, like nuance data to the SAAC, so that way we could provide feedback. And then as the director mentioned, we're very resource constrained. Despite that, if there could be still in that context, trying to push as much as possible joint teacher, special education resource teachers, math planning as much as possible. Evidently, I think that's a priority among many. And then in terms of additional supports also for the map, perhaps SMART goals, SMART planning in IEPs, and then a multi-tiered system of supports model for IEP for students stuck below the level 2. And then linking IEP goals directly to tools mentioned in the map. Instead of withdrawal of students having special education resource teachers co-teaching during regular class time, if that's not already done. PD days for special education resource teachers and EAs, if that's not already done, or more of it. And then for children who may never reach curriculum level math, provide transition plans. Also provide family communication tools for modified versus
Anthony, you are out of time, but I am seeing a lot of nodding heads around the room, especially suggestions of bringing information back to SEAC to respond. So it's greatly appreciated. If you'd like to go back on the speakers list, you can. I am going to continue down my speakers list. But as I said, I know you can't see the nodding heads around the room, but there's lots of nodding heads around the room and an appreciation for the suggestions. So I'm going to continue down my community partner speakers list, and I have Jason next, please.
Through you, Madam Chair, thank you for the report. I could see that the administration is making good progress when it comes to early intervention and sort of helping students early in the year. My question has to do more with strategical simplification in regards to student achievement and well-being. And in regards to the repositioning, my question really has to do about the cultural shift. And in terms of getting the board at least back to the provincial average. Can you discuss more of the strategical roadmaps, what sort of preliminary targets that you have, and the buy-in from both students and staff? Students, they want to, math to be fun, more engaged. You've got the educators, maybe using, more tools. You talked about collaborating, making it more relevant. So could you talk about, that cultural shift and a lot of progress this year, but when do you think you'll get over that hump to really see us back at that average?
Through you, Madam Chair, I'm going to start to give my my team a few minutes to gather their thoughts. We don't have sleeping bags for this evening, but we could, because your question is really fundamental. I would say, Jason, a couple of comments. One is a synergy of systemness. And what I mean by that is alignment and coherence at the school and system levels. By alignment, I mean consistency of application of our policies, procedures, practices, and protocols, which I think that the organization's doing an admirable job at, but can use improvement, no question. Coherence is probably more tied to the reports of this evening, and that's system coherence is really about a small number of ambitious goals that we chase down relentlessly, tied to learning and wellness, so that we're not spread thin on numerous fronts. And in the context of reports like this evening and literacy and numeracy, it's actually not providing our staff with even more tools to utilize. It's almost the opposite. It's saying of the tools we're using, which ones are we're using that are showing the most benefit, and then honing in on a shorter list of choices to go from, so that we can build the common language amongst us around why using those is making a difference with kids. It ties to our frameworks for learning that we're in the process of creating to make sure there's common ground in what we mean by structured literacy or structured numeracy, K-12 for that matter. And that takes a little bit of time to mobilize, but that's the work we're doing. And it is supported by an underpinning of what we just went through as an organization, which is streamlining our programs so that we have, at the elementary level, the greatest opportunity to keep doors open for students. And when we get to the secondary review, turning that into branches of that tree where students pursue their passions. So there's a lot of work that goes into the prompt you've given us, and we're working our way through that. I think it does take a couple of years to turn the corner on that. It takes a couple of years to remobilize the system. I think everyone's working very hard in the system, but I think there are, in that kind of alignment and coherence at the school and system levels, the opportunity to start making a difference in change over time. And that doesn't happen magically in a 25% increase, but it can happen a few percentage points at a time year over year, where when you look back a decade later, the district did move 15 or 20% when it comes to the needle. So lots of work to be done there. I will turn it over to staff for their perspective, but this is the nature of what we're talking about as some of our senior staff planning sessions to move our organization forward.
Through you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the great question, and thank you for the lead in, Dr. Brafoni. Following up from the alignment, there's been great effort over the last couple of years to align the school improvement planning process. So following from the board priority learning plan to the school priority learning plans, where schools are picking a literacy and or numeracy focus that is targeted in terms of key performance indicators, evidence of impact, evidence of learning. We are seeing improvement in that regard in the classroom in terms of the environment for students. In grade 3, 6, and 9, based on last year's EQAO data, we are outperforming the district. And as Superintendent Major referenced earlier, while we cannot release the data because it is embargoed through EQAO, in grade 9, we are seeing extremely encouraging results from semester 1. Currently, the grade 3 and 6 EQAO, it's over a window, and that is being administrated in schools last 2 weeks and into next week as well. So we expect to see, and we look forward to seeing encouraging results there. I also want to speak about the culture shift as well, and referencing an earlier question from Trustee Lyra. Our coaches have, in consultation and great work from school staff and principals, are starting to build great capacity within the system. We have reached over 800 math educators across our system through the networks that we've been doing in the primary, junior, intermediate, and even in senior years. And those staff are in schools. And so the purpose, as our director said, for the instructional coach model is not to take capacity out of schools, it's to build capacity. And that's what certainly these networks have done, and we have evidence of that. And you'll see from the video and from conversations that we've had with students, and also principal observation tools, where we're asking principals at schools to track what they're seeing in the classroom and changes around the use of tools and representations, for example. So we have students who are demonstrating their understanding of mathematics in their own language, or a translanguaging entry point, accessibility entry point. And then we are really working hard to recognize that and develop ways to recognize that learning and value that through observations and conversations. So there is great alignment. No doubt, we have lots of work to do, but we are seeing steady trends upwards, and starting from a point, outperforming the province, we look to further that gain. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Jason, and thank you everyone for the fruitful discussion. I am seeing no other hands in relation to this report. So thank you again, staff, for bringing it forward. We're going to go on to items of information, and I'm going to call upon Trustee Scott or Jenkins to provide a report if available.
I have no report.
All right, thank you. And I will look in, I don't believe Trustee Lee is here, but I will look to Trustee Lyra or any staff that can fill in a gap for OSTA.
There is no public OSTA report this evening.
All right, thank you very much. So we are under items of new business. I know there's quite a few items of new business this evening, so we'll use 3-minute timer. Trustee Kaplan-Murth.
Before I start with my item of new business, I just wanted to recognize that it's Pride Month began beginning of June, and sending my support to us LGBTQ community members, and also Shavuot ended this evening, so Chag Sameach to those who were celebrating. So this is my final time speaking as an Ottawa-Carleton District School Board trustee. As of this evening, I am resigning. A fellow trustee asked me to explain why I am leaving, and so if you will oblige, I will have a few final words. It may take me 4 minutes, not 3. It has been an honor to represent Zone 9, Capital, and Alta Vista. I was tasked by my constituents with the responsibility to advocate for academic supports for students with disabilities, neurodiverse students, 2L LGBTQ students, Indigenous and racialized students, and other marginalized groups. I have done everything that I said I would to the best of my ability in the face of vile harassment, defamation, death threats, and disrespect to me and my family. My advocacy for public health measures, my unwavering support for transgender rights, and my unspokenness about being targeted as a Jew and as an Israeli have made me a particular focus of hate. This is a very difficult time to run a Board of Education with chronic underfunding from the Ministry of Education, staff shortages, overcrowding of classrooms, unprecedented dysregulation of students, and the concomitant challenge of increasingly radicalized groups that seek to influence us through an avalanche of emails, petitions, and disruptions of our boardrooms and schools. That's not only in Ottawa, that's across Ontario and across Canada and North America. I thank the director, senior staff, support staff, educators, community representatives, school councils, and families across the district for their dedication to public education. I also thank fellow trustees and student trustees who have stood up for marginalized and vulnerable populations. Thank you also to those who have had the decency to acknowledge the vile Jew hate that my family and I have been subjected to. Ultimately, I am resigning because of the combination of the toxicity from outside of this board and from within this board. Within the first weeks of our work as trustees, we had to evacuate this boardroom because of unwieldy protesters against public health measures. I was disappointed then, and I've been disappointed since then by the inability or unwillingness of this board to acknowledge how organized disinformation campaigns and populist movements have shaped our policy and program decisions. The dysfunction within the board is not as well known and harder to describe. It is not mere cliquishness or even partisanship. The OCDSB has a long-standing pattern of profound dysfunction and lack of leadership. Trustees repeatedly weaponize the code of conduct complaints to attempt to silence or punish fellow trustees. The Board of Trustees expends inordinate time and money rehashing issues and defending itself in legal matters that ultimately cause harm to students and staff, as well as the reputation of the district. Indeed, we are told not to criticize the board because the OCDSB does not want to lose the trust of the Ottawa public. Yet a true relationship of trust is based on transparency. I am not the first trustee to leave, nor will I likely be the last to do so, either by resigning or by declining to run for the next term because of this toxicity and dysfunction. By stepping down, I leave Zone 9 of Ottawa without a representative elected by the community, vulnerable to whomever the trustees around this table choose to replace me prior to the next municipal elections in 2026. As I have said before, I hope that someone holds the OCDSB's feet to the fire, holds the district and the board accountable. The Ministry of Education, as you know, is investigating our board's failure to meet its fiduciary obligations. I suggest that the board should also be investigated on the grounds of poor governance. I end with a final note of caution. Keep an eye on school boards across Canada. What is happening in Ottawa is particularly problematic, but it is not unique to Ottawa. I cannot overemphasize the importance of the work of trustees and boards of education. We need people to stand up for public education, but nobody should have to do so in the face of the kind of harassment I have experienced. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Trustee Kaplan-Murth. I will hand it to the chair for any remarks you may want to give at this time.
I don't wish to have remarks from the chair. It's not her who has the final word. That is my resignation.
Trustee Kaplan-Murth, we will still need to accept the resignation at this time, so I will look to the chair to provide, especially public, the next step.
The resignation must be accepted by the board at a regular board meeting, and at that point, our policy kicks in, and we will have a process for replacing when there is a vacancy, as we have done previously already within this term of the board.
All right, thank you, Chair Scott, very much for the remarks. Are there any other items of new business this evening? All right, I am seeing none, so I will declare this meeting adjourned.